it's not completely linear. Of course, a lot of things are done at the same time. And I can share with you where we are in the sense, what will help now up here in Kula. Obviously, a lot of, as you expressed, a lot of the attention was down kind of in the impact zone down in Lahaina. And it is astounding to see, as you've seen pictures. It's also astounding to see when one person's house is damaged, or to hear one story of a child that, like you said, counts fire hydrants now. That is going to be something that we have to deal with, the psychological impact, as much as anything in this next phase of our recovery. So the search and rescue, as it completes, then it opens up a lot more of the services to go and do the quick environmental assessment, to get the EPA to do what they can to get the fundamental clearance, the basic clearance of toxic chemicals and toxic compounds out of different houses, so that people can get back into their properties and they can go safely assess and begin the next stage, which is clearance of everything else out, kind of try to recoup what might be there, if there's any family artifacts that they want to possibly be able to retain if they're there. And then the next stage, which is really strong debris removal, which it may be getting announced here in this moment, but I'll share with you. I agreed with the advice that was given to move the debris process forward quickly. So it will be done primarily through FEMA in partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. That was the way we could accelerate it fastest, with the caveat that we will use local companies to the best of our ability. Very important to me. Also, that we'll pay prevailing wages forever companies go into that, and have a cultural component, because it's very important to us, as we know. The culture of Hawaii is different than many other cultures. And so that project moves forward now, because we want also people to, like I said, get into their properties before anyone can really have a meaningful conversation about, do you open up different parts of the state so that people can start returning? So all those things are happening really one at a time, but also sometimes in parallel, because we know that different people are recovering in different stages. There are lots of services I want you to make sure you're aware of. I don't know which ones will fit each person's situation, but they are available. So from the standpoint of recovery, initial recovery, my recommendation is to sign up for FEMA. We will make sure that no one is victimized. That was a concern for a lot of people in the Lahaina side. Don't think that that's the concern here, but people were worried about giving their name or signing up. The reason for signing up for FEMA is because it will bring in large incremental amounts of resources to get rent subsidy or to get long-term rentals. I have a 36-week contract already with the American Red Cross for housing, and then we'll extend that. So for example, if a person is currently, their house burned down and they need an Airbnb or a hotel room, we have a much longer runway than people were thinking they might have. And I tend to extend that, whether it's through additional state resources or additional federal resources. We don't want people to worry about becoming homeless, though I'm completely aware that this community is probably taking people into their homes. But that is an opportunity, and we can do many things. We'll give you extra details, but we can even do direct contracting. So FEMA does a lease with an Airbnb up here, not all the way over in Napili, as was pointed out, an hour and a half away from someone's child's school. But we can do that so that they can get a stable housing situation for a long time as they begin to go through the very difficult process psychologically and physically of recovering. So that's one large part. So that housing piece is going in. We will also, though this is more probably relevant to Lahaina side, we will be building transitional housing that will be quality, that will be not the rebuild of Lahaina, but housing for those who somehow or other fall through the cracks, who wouldn't be able to get resources. Maybe they've lived with us for 25 years, but they aren't a citizen. Maybe they can't, for some reason otherwise, get service. So we'll be doing some of that. But that will not mean that we neglect the things that you have to have done here. So we will have the environmental movement, the clearance, and then hopefully we can accelerate rebuilding for those who choose to build their homes. I don't know what people's choices will be, but they should make them. They should make them, and then insist on, we as our state representatives, senators, council members, so thank you guys for bringing us together. We'll make sure that we, one by one, make sure that you have everything we could possibly offer. So that is another big piece. So There's resources from FEMA, there's resources from American Red Cross. There will be resources, of course, from all of the settlements that people have if they have insurance. And then there's going to be philanthropic support, which is being organized right now. And I want you to be aware of it. They'll make their announcements soon. But for anyone who's lost their house, they do intend to provide resources monthly for a series of months. And they'll make that announcement. So there's a whole lot of help that we want to offer. And that way, yes, ma'am.
How do we find, like you say, they're going to make an announcement? How will we make sure that we're in the right place to receive that announcement?
Very good question. So I will make sure we repeat it many times over. We can also bring it back up to town meeting, which would be, we can have a talk story. It will definitely be circulated in great detail to our council members and reps, which means that we have their numbers. You should have my number, and we will get these services to people, okay? But right, because I know that right now some people don't have their phones, some people don't have their TV, some people don't have internet, or some people just are totally overwhelmed at the moment. So that's just an important thing. All of those resources, we also have a sheet that you can quickly go through. Don't worry about getting it right the first time or perfectly, okay? Yes, ma'am.
I was just saying, that's why it's important that you guys get onto the FEMA list or the Red Cross, because they'll have our names.
I contacted FEMA and I never got any response. The day after the fire, I got a FEMA number. I've never heard anything from FEMA.
So we will take your number today and get it straight to them, and one by one, like I said, there are, of course, many people affected, but many people are also tucked in now into a hotel room or what have you through the FEMA and Red Cross program. Yes, so those resources will all be available, but that's just a part, even a small part of the recovery. The much larger part is going to be as we figure out how to get people enough resources to rebuild their home if that's their choice, whether they need to relocate to a different part of Maui if that's their choice. People will make different choices, okay? I know this community is very unlikely to want to move or leave, but there are a lot of people who are just kind of spending part of their time on the other side of the island doing seasonal work, whatever, so different scenarios for different people. What else can I share with you? There are about 5,000 people right now in temporary housing, hotel rooms or Airbnbs. We will do a contract with all these entities so that it's just solid, so you don't have to worry too much. So you can go on with the business of whether it's a long-term cleanup or it's a recovery for your kids in school and so on. That's how we're approaching it right now. There's going to be a lot of conversation about how we try to make people whole in their lives to the best of our ability. Obviously, the people who lost a loved one or a home, it's going to be a much longer and maybe impossible process. But that's where we will be. And please make sure that at the very least, whoever you are closest to in government has your detailed information, and we can constantly make sure there's follow-up. What other questions can I answer?
So again, thank you for being here. I know I think everyone is appreciative of all the resources that are being devoted to fire victims, and there's so much of the attention is being put on that right now, as it should. But I think I also speak for the island community as a whole, where we need to address the economic fallout that is currently happening in real time very quickly. And the inconvenient reality is, it's kind of like you hear we have 4 days of food on the shelves at all time because of our food sustainability. We have about 2 weeks of no tourists on the shelves before things start souring really bad. And it's been 20 days, as I said, and my wife is she has a wedding business. We have 3 friends that have already moved to Oregon. And we had a lot of people freaking out really bad about, they're crying to me because they're laying off people. Like someone's grandparents died in Lahaina and now she has to lay them off. And so I know you have a lot going on right now. And but it's like we need to start having discussion as an island and as a legislature about the economic fallout that is happening.
Yeah, totally
right.
right.
Homes still need to raise their kids.
Let me address that. If anyone couldn't hear, the comment was, what do we do about the economy of all of Maui in the wake of the fires? And so a couple things that we are messaging now, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but I have expectations it's going to accelerate and get better somewhat quickly. There was an initial shock to some people, and I'm not going to blame, but some people said, don't go to Maui. That was a mistake, okay? the answer is come to Maui to help us heal, not to, of course, West Maui or perhaps parts of Kula at the moment until we just get over this space of the immediate tragedy. But we're going to spend extra resources marketing Maui and how it's safe, and also all of Hawaii, because remember, there's some people on the mainland that don't even distinguish between the counties, amazingly. So there's that. Additionally, the message will go out as loud and clear as we can, especially as we approach the first of the month, that people should continue to come to Maui. I'll tell you right now, I understand, because I have a lot of friends that also have businesses on Maui. One friend has a furniture business with three locations, and she's having to lay off a ton of people. And we saw what happened with COVID. So there will be an economic plan led by Jimmy Tokioka, the Deep Ed director, to augment travel and awareness about Hawaii and the islands. We'll do it nationally. I will also say it's highly likely, and I just want to be blunt with people, it's highly likely when the tragedy falls out of the public eye internationally, people will start coming back. It's kind of an extraordinary phenomenon, but that is often what happens. So we should be prepared to do what we have to do to recover while that's going on. And I think it's an appropriate way for us to show our love for people, and also a good way for people to have something else to think about rather than the tragedy, like their business or their family that they're supporting. So we'll be pushing there. Also, there will be resources. There are some things that do not work perfectly for small businesses. What's one of the problems with the Small Business Administration? It's very helpful, but it's loans, and it tends to be, you have to demonstrate a certain amount of monthly income to qualify. We will also help with that. It may very well come to the point where we ask for grants for small businesses that were shuttered for 90 days, 180 days. This will be something that we in the legislature have to fight for. There is good news here, and your delegation is very well positioned in both housing and finance. I mean, couldn't be better, honestly. And that's going to be the lead of the discussion. There will be definite state support. There's going to be also settlement support. Again, it's a reason to be networked in and locked in, at least for the purposes of recovery. Yeah, that's central to what we have to do.
Well, thank you. I know another.
It's another piece of survival.
Yes.
Totally. And you shouldn't. And for what it's worth, between friends, you should not ever feel self-conscious about mentioning all these other things. First of all, it's helpful for everyone to be reminded if they haven't thought of something. Second, it is survival. 10% of Maui, that's what Lahaina represented, plus Kula, 10% was impacted directly. The other 90% is certainly impacted indirectly in a very real way.
Thank you.
I'm glad that question was asked. It's perfect. Question, if you couldn't hear, was can we get help with some of the mitigation of brush and trees in the gulch? The answer is yes. And this morning we've advanced, they call it an RFA, a request for assistance, to the top level. So there's multiple layers of these responses. You have the community layer, and you have the county and state layers, right? There's also the federal layer. And so we have asked for federal support. We have extraordinary capacity with our military. They have certain functions that are better than others, but with the Army Corps of Engineers, we've made that request. And we're bird dogging it now aggressively. Also, for example, Senator Schatz is meeting with Secretary Austin, the head of the Department of Defense. So, as you know, from top down, we're communicating these needs. And we may have to ask a couple times. We will keep coming at it. I will tell you, this is 20 hours a day, basically. So, yes, ask for those things. And if one level of government can't get it, then we ask the next, and so on, until we get satisfaction.
If I may jump in, Carrie, just to answer